Hey, this is Chris, and I'm here today to talk about God of War: Chains of Olympus, Ready at Dawn's prequel to the console games. Chains of Olympus is a prequel to the events of God of War 1 and 2, so it takes place after Kratos has already been saved by Ares and then basically becomes enslaved to the gods of Olympus, but it takes place before the events of God of War 1 and 2, and actually seems to finish right before where God of War 1 would pick up. It is a very well told story. It's a story that ties very well with stories of God of War 1 and 2, and actually seems to tie into what we'll actually eventually see in God of War 3. It gives Kratos more character. There's some pretty cool twists and turns to his character development in there, and it ties in very well with the other stories.
I grow tired of the gods' request, Athena. I have given enough. Now take these nightmares from my head.
Now, the most important part of any God of War game is, of course, the control scheme, and although the PSP has less buttons than the PS2, Ready at Dawn Studios has somehow actually managed to make the controls work better, I think, than they did on the PS2. You're missing buttons, so they basically combined things, which makes some of the access to some of your moves faster. So instead of having to use the right analog stick to roll, you just press L and R at the same time to roll. Magic is now assigned to face buttons as opposed to having to change between them on the D-pad. So a lot of little things like this makes the whole scheme work better, and it feels absolutely perfect. The studio's done an amazing job at porting pretty much everything over from the console. That whole element of the game is just absolutely perfect. Ready at Dawn's first release of Daxter had amazing animation, and for the time we thought that it was the best looking game on the PSP, and they did some amazing feats. But that was absolutely nothing compared to what you're going to see in God of War: Chains of Olympus. The game really does compare with either of the PlayStation 2 releases, which is absolutely amazing. Texture detail is phenomenal. The game runs great, and the art direction is par for par with anything you're going to see on the console. It's an absolutely stunning achievement on the PSP. And if you want to show anybody what the system can do, you need to put this game in.
Is there anything we can do to repay you?
The sound also is up to the par of the consoles. Sound effects are taken directly from there, it sounds like. Make sure you've got a good set of headphones because the whole audio track of the game is absolutely stunning as well. Now, the bulk of what you're going to see in the game is basically the same sort of stuff that you saw in the first two console games. Puzzles work a lot of the same way, and you're going to same sort of progression. You come into a room, a bunch of bad guys appear, and you take them out, and then you move on. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but there's not really anything new added to the formula here. Sort of the same thing that happened with God of War 2. It's like they took everything that was cool about the game and then redid it all and kind of tried to make it bigger and better, and that's basically what we saw here. But if you love God of War, you're going to find a whole lot of new stuff that will keep you going through the end. I mean, even though we've played this basically before twice, it's incredibly engaging, and you're not going to want to put it down. So, it is basically a repeat, but it's extremely well done. Now, one of the only disappointing things that we found in the game is that there really are only 3 boss fights in the game, and only one of them is on the scale of, the huge fights that you'd see in some of the past games. So you don't have those huge boss battles that we'd seen in past games, which is a little disappointing, but it does work well with the story. And so it seems a little weird, but it's kind of more realistic than before. But we would have liked to seen some bigger fights with some cool finishes. If you're a fan of the series, we probably didn't need to tell you to go buy it in the first place, but you definitely should, and it's a great reason to own the PSP.